Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about YouTube shadow bans. Shadow banning is a practice that some social media platforms, such as YouTube, use to censor content without the user's knowledge. It is a type of censorship that prevents users from posting comments, liking videos, and even searching for certain content. YouTube does not publicly acknowledge the existence of shadow bans, but there is plenty of evidence to suggest that they do exist. I will demonstrate how my account has been shadow banned in this video. YouTube shadow bans work by hiding content from users without them knowing it. When a user is shadow banned, their comments will not be visible to other users, their videos will not be recommended, and they will not be able to search for certain keywords. Needless to say, this is designed to censor and frustrate users and prevent them from engaging with others on the platform or getting their content seen. YouTube shadow banning is done through a combination of algorithms and human moderators. The algorithms are originally designed to flag content that is considered inappropriate, such as hate speech, violence, or spam. Human moderators then review the flagged content and decide whether or not to shadow ban the account. However, in the case we discuss here, it has been used to suppress political activism and censor non-mainstream or unofficial views. YouTube shadow banning is a problem for several reasons. First, it's a form of censorship. When YouTube shadow bans an account, it is essentially preventing the user from expressing their views and opinions. This is a violation of freedom of speech, which is a fundamental human right that the West claims and preaches to the world as one of its core values. This is especially concerning for political activists, who often rely on social media platforms to reach a wider audience. When political activists are shadow banned, their voices are silenced, and their messages are prevented from being heard. Second, YouTube shadow banning is often arbitrary and inconsistent. The algorithms and human moderators that are used to determine which accounts to shadow ban are often biased. This means that accounts that express unpopular or controversial views are more likely to be shadow banned than accounts that express official and mainstream views. Third, YouTube shadow banning can have a chilling effect on free speech. When people know that they could be shadow banned for expressing their views, they are likely to practice self-censorship and be less likely to speak out. This can lead to a society where only the most mainstream views are expressed. There are many examples of YouTube shadow bans that violate freedom of speech. One example related to a high-profile case of Praga.u, a conservative news outlet that was shadow banned from YouTube in 2019. Praga.u eventually sued YouTube, and the company was forced to lift the shadow ban. Another example is the case of the Unity 2020 campaign, a progressive political action group that was shadow banned from YouTube in 2020. The Unity 2020 campaign eventually filed a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, and YouTube was forced to lift the shadow ban. Then, in 2019, YouTube shadow banned the account of political activist and journalist Abby Martin. Abby's videos were critical of the United States government and its policies. YouTube claimed that Abby's videos violated its policies on hate speech and violence, but many people knew she was shadow banned because of her political views. Here is my own account example. As you can see, there are two different web browsers with two different YouTube accounts on the same CGTN video. Whenever my Morpheus X Unmask account makes any comments or replies, they will immediately be removed and disappear from any discussion, and they will never be displayed to other users, as confirmed by the second YouTube account in this demonstration. This has started to happen since the episode 1 video upload and has gotten worse with each subsequent video. Obviously, hard-hitting truth videos and channels are not welcome on YouTube, and they have been stepping up the effort to suppress them. Even former YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki somewhat revealed this in her 60-minute interview.
The law under 230 does not hold you responsible for user-generated content, but in that you recommend things, sometimes 1,000 times, sometimes 5,000 times, shouldn't you be held responsible for that material?
She told us that earlier this year, YouTube started reprogramming its algorithms in the US to recommend questionable videos much less, and point users who search for that kind of material to authoritative sources like news clips. With these changes, Wojcicki says they have cut down the amount of time Americans watch controversial content by 70%.
You can go too far, and that can become censorship. And so we have been working really hard to figure out what's the right way to balance responsibility with freedom of speech.
But the private sector is not legally beholden to the First Amendment.
You're not operating under some freedom of speech mandate. You get to pick.
What we really had to do was we had to tighten our enforcement of that to make sure that we were catching everything. And we use a combination of people and machines. So Google as a whole has about 10,000 people that are focused on controversial content.
This is about the suppression of and purging of all dissident voices in the landscape of alternative media. I mean, the U.S. establishment has been clamoring for years to do this, to purge everyone that doesn't kind of toe the line of what the U.S. foreign policy establishment wants. And really, it's kind of laughable when you look at how much does the U.S. really meddle in, in foreign policy all around the world? How much does the U.S. undermine sovereignty of countries all around the world? How much has the U.S. really pumped its own propaganda and dominated this kind of cultural hegemony over the rest of the world? The list goes on and on and on. So this is kind of this is basically the culmination of a years-long plan to purge all alternative media, whether it's people, opposing the assassination of General Soleimani and the purging of pro-Iran voices on networks like Twitter and Facebook. But really, it's the kind of coalescing of big tech Silicon Valley giants working and acquiescing with state government policy. And what's scary about this is there wasn't even legislation that demanded them to do so. This was a kind of a preemptive coordination with the government on behalf of organizations like Google and Facebook. And you saw the fact checking go into account, where you had people like on the board of Atlantic Council. This is defense contractor funded think tanks that were now tasking themselves with fact checking. The problem is that we have the US corporate media, which basically acts as the arm of the Pentagon whenever we need critical dissent against US foreign policy. These voices kind of uniformly come together, they coalesce, and they essentially just echo whatever the foreign policy line is of the US empire and its junior collaborators. And that is a highly sophisticated propaganda model that we basically parrot and declare as free press. We herald and cherish the notion of free press in this country, but what does that really mean if we have this ever-constrictive media apparatus that essentially only echoes corporate media talking points? I mean, this is an apparatus that is controlled by 5 corporations. It affects more than 90% of everything we see, hear, and read. And for me, as a critical thinker and as someone who really cares about what our government is doing abroad, I feel like I need to have a wide range of views that I can navigate on my own. And I don't want the infantilizing effect of censorship. I don't want my reality curated for me by big tech giants. I want to be able to pick and choose what the truth is, determine my own reality based on the facts that are available. They don't want those grievances shown or aired. They want to sanitize our reality and pretend that these viewpoints simply don't exist, because then it's easier to basically control the masses and manufacture consent for whatever they want to do. And Max, I think it's really crucial. I want the Russian perspective as we're heading into this potential standoff, a potential hot war with 2 nuclear armed powers. I want the Chinese perspective. I want the Iranian perspective. I want the Russian perspective. I'm not a child. All this does is constrict the already very severely limited parameters of debate on our airwaves. And I feel like we're not children. We can make up our own minds. And this algorithmic censorship that has further tightened its control over our airwaves. I mean, backpaging sources like The Real News. And now you have this media machinery that basically uniformly acts as one voice, whether it's on Fox News or CNN or whatever, when it comes to US foreign policy and our supposed friends and foes around the world. And you see a similar uniformity, just like you did with the Venezuela regime change efforts, you see a similar uniformity acting in reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, where it's the same resolve and hysterical browbeating, hand-wringing that we saw after 9/11, right? Well, we need to do something about this. What are we going to do about this? Of course, we're the world arbiter of morality and everything holy, even though there was no attack here.
I'm really glad that you brought up the sort of algorithmic censorship, because that is another thing that has been keeping me up at night. In many ways, on these algorithms, both on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, it's how we get the message out, because, as Abby said, we're not on network news, right? We have to hustle to gain visibility, and there are a lot of ways that these privately owned tech companies can essentially tweak their algorithms to make us invisible and to make others invisible. This is exactly what we saw in the wake of the Russiagate, hysteria that Abby mentioned before. His point being is that is the stuff that got shadow banned in the wake of, the Russiagate. Not just my stuff, but the police accountability report, Eddie Conway's coverage of prisons at Rattling the Bars. So for folks who are cheering on or not thinking that the shuttering of RT America or deplatforming of platforms like Radio Sputnik, that it's going to stop there. It's not. We've seen in the past that it hasn't stopped there.
YouTube shadow banning is a big problem for political activists. Political activists often use YouTube to share their views and protests as a form of dissent. When YouTube shadow bans political activists, it is preventing them from reaching their audience and from carrying out their work. This is a serious violation of freedom of speech. Political activists have the right to express their views, even if those views are unpopular or controversial. YouTube shadow banning is a way of silencing political activists and preventing them from participating in the democratic process. In conclusion, YouTube shadow banning is a huge problem that needs to be addressed seriously. It is acting as a gatekeeper to conduct censorship that violates freedom of speech. Its method is arbitrary and inconsistent, and political activists are particularly vulnerable to it, as this is a serious violation of their right to freedom of expression for their opinions and political views. If you are concerned about YouTube shadow banning, you should reach out to YouTube and ask them to stop shadow banning. You should definitely share this video with your friends and family and help raise awareness about this important issue. You should also give extra support to those channels that suffer from shadow bans. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.